welcome and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and TechAdvice.Life video. I'm joined today by Dr. Brandon Gien. He is the founder and CEO of Good Design Australia, the chair of Australia's annual Good Design Awards, and a President-Emeritus of the World Design Association. Welcome again to the program.
Thanks, Alex. Really nice to be with you.
Now, it's been at least a couple of years since we last spoke, and we're now in the 2020s. It's been since last decade since we last spoke. Now, each decade has its own design flair. I remember the 70s look ultra futuristic, and then, in my mind at least, there seemed to be a bit of resurgence of that in the early 2000s. So what are your thoughts on that, and what do you see as the major trends to emerge throughout the 2020s?
I think the most obvious trend, if you like, that's coming out is using much more sustainable materials.
Absolutely,
in design. Yeah. That's something that maybe 5 years ago was kind of like a trend, but you're sort of seeing a lot more emphasis on that, and I think that's a great thing.
It is, yeah.
Consumers are actually paying much more attention to sustainability, and I'm seeing a lot of that, right through from architectural projects that have got a sustainability angle to them, through to our product design category that we get in the awards. There's always a beautiful little sustainability message there, and sometimes they are quite big, and even the ones that are at least trying to edge into the right direction. I think that's a worthy trend, and I hope it's not really a trend. I hope it's actually becomes a mainstay of all design. It really should be.
There's a famous saying that says, one person can change the world, and it comes down to our individual decisions. Before we had plastic, everything was in glass or in wood, and then plastic came along and plastic took over the world, but we know how it's choking the oceans, we know how it's causing all sorts of problems, and yet it's our individual decisions that collectively, multiplying the force of one into many, that can really change everything. And yeah, that is something, I always think it's today's technology that will birth the sustainable future, the renewable future of tomorrow. And it's a pain, it's a shame that we have to go through today's technology to get there, but without it, we'd be living in caves. So. Yeah.
Plastic is, it's a designer's best friend. We figured out how to injection mold plastic, and all of a sudden it gave birth to all these incredible products. It was sort of an infinite number of things that you can make with plastic. But it's only now that we sort of look back and go, wow, what have we done? We didn't quite think of the sustainability impacts of a material like plastic that takes hundreds if not thousands of years to decompose. We know, just looking at the amount of plastic that's now sitting in our oceans, that's a really, really scary thing, and I call that a massive design problem. We've got to try and figure out a way to be more sustainable in the materials that we use, and rather than suggesting that a product should be made from virgin plastic, which is new plastic, we should look at how do we use existing plastic that may be recycled. These spectacles I'm wearing are a really good example. A company called Dresden, really, really beautiful design story, but they actually use recycled plastic from various different sources, whether it comes from the ocean or just plain recycled plastic to make a thing like spectacles. So for me, that's nice. It's functional. It does what it needs to do, but there's also a nice sustainability message to it as well. And I think that's something that all designers really should be focusing on more. Yeah,
and look, only yesterday I was at a store and I saw they had rice husk cutlery, and they had this bamboo lunch boxes, and we see bamboo even on those ads on TV for Step1.Life underpants made from bamboo. So there's so many more materials that modern technology has allowed us to harness. And I also heard about how nylon in our clothes, with every wash, there's millions of particles of plastic that are getting into the food chain, into the oceans. We can't see them, and yet the fish are eating them, and then we're eating them. And so this requires a radical rethink, but within the bounds of we can't just stop everything and become cavemen. We need to use today's technology to accelerate the development of the next. And your glasses are a great example of that. It's coming to life.
I think the thing that people need to understand is that you're right. We don't have to go live in caves, but rather than digging the resources out of the ground, there's an abundance of material. You don't need to go and dig it up.
Just need to know how to repurpose it.
You mentioned nylon. It's a fantastic product called Net Effect. It's actually a carpet manufacturer, Interface, they're based in the US. They discovered a major problem as well, which is discarded fishing nets. So big commercial, fishing trawlers, when their nets actually, get
Break
to a point
or-
and break,
yeah.
some of them don't do the right thing and actually just cut their nets. They drop to the ocean floor. Now you can imagine the damage that does to our ocean floor in terms of not only getting tangled around reefs, but what it does for fish. These guys developed a whole systematic way of harvesting those nets.
This resource sitting there, this waste,
Exactly, digging that up,
Yeah.
and turning it into commercial carpet tiles.
Incredible.
Why? Because nets actually have an incredibly high content of nylon, and nylon is good for carpets. So they're doing good for the environment. They're getting their material. They're digging it out of the ocean.
As a
and they're
mining
turning it
the ocean.
into a beautiful, commercially successful product.
Yeah.
That's what we need more of. That sort of thing I love, and that's all design. It's not just the product, but it's the whole systems design approach to solving a problem like that.
It's the lateral thinking that changes the world. I mean, it's this clever thinking, ways of doing things that people haven't thought of before. And I mean, I always love lateral thinking, and I always think of different sort of things when I'm talking to companies to say, have you thought of marketing things in this way? And I sort of think, why don't you think of that yourself? But anyway, it's just one of those things. Some of us can see it, and others need the designers of the future and people like yourself to bring it to life. So look, the start of the 2020s has been remarkable in so many ways. I mean, we're barely, a couple more days will be in March, the third month of the first year of the 2020s, and we've had smoke from bushfires, choking smoke, incredible rain just after amazing droughts. We've had massive floods, and of course we have the coronavirus threat that is now stalking humanity across the planet. So how can the principles of good design produce better protective clothing and masks? How can good design improve the way quarantines are conducted? And how can good design make humanity better at dealing with these incredible crises?
Geez, you ask pretty hairy questions. I mean, look, I think the important thing to note is that design's not the silver bullet. It's not going to solve, all the problems of the world.
Yeah.
But a design mindset, as in looking at the problem through the lens of design, really allows you to see the problem in a different perspective. One of the really critical things in the design process is empathy, just as an example. And empathy is so important. If you're designing a wheelchair for someone who's who can't walk, you can't do that by doing a bunch of research and sitting behind your desk and going, voila, we have a wheelchair.
Yeah, a few CAD drawings.
You need to jump into that person's shoes. You need to live and breathe what it's like to not be able to walk and to be in a wheelchair 24/7. To understand what it's like to wheel yourself up a ramp if it's if it's too steep, and so empathy is critical. If you're designing a toothbrush, if you're designing a motor car, you're designing a face mask that's going to protect you from the coronavirus or from the bushfires and the smoke that we've had here in Sydney, and I think that idea of empathy can be applied to the whole world as well. At the end of the day, we're all designing and consuming as human beings. So that's one little thing that I think I'd throw out there and say, design just allows you to understand who you are trying to solve that problem for, and being a little bit more empathetic about that, and really understanding at the end of the day, there's a human being at the end of it, or the end of that process and of that product or that service, and just being really conscious about how you go about doing that.
And if we think about it, we've all come across products and we think, who the heck designed this? They didn't have the end user in mind. I mean, one thing when you look at problems, it's often useful to chunk things down into smaller problems. And what that does is forces you to change perspective, to get a paradigm shift, to see something from a different angle that suddenly awakens a different part of your brain. And that's kind of what you're talking about. And one of the things I read about just recently was the masks. They cover your face. It doesn't look like you. You look like you've come out of a theatre. And so somebody had the clever idea of taking a photo of the bottom part of your face and printing it on a mask. And the articles were talking about how that would allow you to unlock your phone with what looked like you. I don't think it would work on an iPhone where they're using 30,000 infrared dots and measuring aspects of your face. So it might fool some of the phones that just take a photograph, but still it's a good idea. And I guess that's one of the ways that thinking about something for end users is changing. I think we were discussing it before. it shifts the mask from being something to do with medical to something to do with fashion.
Yeah. And look, I hope we don't get to a point where every single person down the street's wearing a face mask.
Hopefully not, yes.
The coronavirus is at a point now where everyone's a little bit afraid of, where it is going to go. But if that is the case, that's a role for design to say, well, how can we, again, be more empathetic towards that problem? We don't want everyone walking around like they've walked out of a hospital. So is it something that is actually a bit more considered?
Yeah.
Does it turn into a bit of a fashion item? First and foremost, it's got to be functional. If you're just wearing this thing and it's uncomfortable, you end up taking it off.
Yeah.
So designers have to tap into all those parameters and go, right, how do we design something that's functional, that's desirable, that's economical, it's got to be
effective.
It's got to be effective and hopefully also sustainable. So I think I always have the opinion that if a designer or someone with a design mindset is sitting at a table where these big problems are discussed, they just bring a different point of view, and that's important. They're never going to solve the problems, but it's just let's look at the problem from a different perspective. And I think that's what design's really good at.
Yeah, as we were just saying. Now, 2020 also sees the next annual Good Design Awards. So how many years have the awards been around? And what are the deadlines and what is your message to this year's entrants?
The awards have been around since 1958.
Wow.
So 2018 we had our big 60th anniversary at the Sydney Opera House, which was a beautiful event. So we're going into the 62nd year of these awards, one of the oldest in the world, which we're very proud of. And it's going to be another year filled with incredible projects. We had a peek behind the scenes, and there's quite a few really, really cool things that have coming through. The diversity of the awards, I think, is one of the things that we also are very proud of. It's everything from architectural design to product design, and under product design there's motor cars and boats and kettles and toasters and consumer electronics and
I still remember the beehive, with the flow of honey. I mean, something that beekeepers would have loved for thousands of years. I mean, I thought of it in 2018 or 2017.
Yeah,
incredible.
I mean, I think that's the thing that's so fantastic about the awards. So, you do get just an incredible array of design innovations.
And it's global. It's not just for Australia.
It is, yeah. For me, it's the favourite time of the year for me.
Yeah.
We get to play around with literally hundreds and hundreds of these incredibly innovative projects, and we invite judges from pretty much all over the world to spend a week in what is actually a giant toy shop. Really.
Yeah.
We have
Christmas.
Interesting discussions around what is good design, what makes good design, what is good design today compared to 10, 20 years ago, and that to me is a really fascinating forum to be a part of, and really trying to unpick where is our world going in a way, and what role is design playing in that journey.
I can't remember if I asked you this before, but are you filming any of those discussions with the camera crew so that some of the most insightful things just out of the design process could be a little TV show in itself?
Well, we do, and we've got a TV show that's now been going for this year will be in its fourth season, Australia by Design Innovations, and it's screened on Network 10. And it basically goes through and looks at all the design innovations that come through the awards. We do a top 10 and do a bit of a countdown to the best innovation in Australia as well.
For that year.
So it's a different way of looking at the awards. For us, it's a fantastic opportunity to promote design to the general public as well through a TV show. So yeah, that's been fun.
And it's a behind the scenes look at the judging process, but also the fundamentals of design.
Yeah.
That the public ordinarily wouldn't see.
Exactly right, and I think that's a really important thing as well. As designers, we often tend to live in a bubble, and we think that everyone sees the world that
in the same way,
which in actual fact,
no.
The person on the street may not know that the thing they're going by has actually been designed by someone. So we try and draw that distinction, saying, well, actually everything around us has been designed with this building that we're in, or the chair you're sitting on, or the camera that I've been filmed with. Every single thing isn't there by accident. Someone's actually designed it. So that's part of what we're trying to do through the awards, but also definitely through the TV show.
So when are the awards this year, and what are the deadlines for entrance?
The deadline for entry for the 2020 awards is the end of March, so
about a month to go.
A mad rush for everyone getting their submissions in to us. And then the awards ceremony is going to be held in Sydney in July. Have to come along.
Yeah, absolutely.
Black tie. That's when we get to celebrate all the winners and really profile the ones that end up winning the big top prizes.
And is a venue decided upon yet, or is it still?
Still in the making, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, but it's always something spectacular wherever you've been.
You've been to one,
yeah. I've been to a couple. So, in your mind, what were the best designs that stood out over the last decade? And I'm going to ask you about the history of design stretching back thousands of years later. But just in the last decade, what do you think has really stood out for you?
It's such a difficult question to answer that, because it's, I always say it's like picking your favorite child. I've got literally hundreds that I could sort of reference, but I always come back to, I guess, a way of helping me make that decision is designs that are actually solving a problem. If they're not at their heart solving a problem, I can't, and our judges do that as well. They're kind of, it's nice, it's beautifully designed, but it's actually not. It's not making our lives better. It's clutter. It's going to end up on in landfills somewhere. The one project that I keep on coming back to is a beautiful product called the Sea Bin. This is two Aussie. One of them was an industrial designer who just had that kind of moment, like we're just designing plastic and it ends up in the ocean. And they came up with basically it's a filtration system similar to your skimmer box in your swimming pool that sits in marinas and harbours and just works on a skimmer box sort of principle and sucks plastic from the surface of the water. And they are scaling up at the moment. The product's been up there for a good couple of years. And to me, that's great design. It's innovation, and at the heart of it, it's solving a problem, a big problem. Is it going to take all the plastic out of the oceans? No, but it's going to take enough out, and it's going to actually excite people in a way that hey, maybe I could solve a problem like that as well. It's helping to purify the oceans, purify the planet. Yeah. Another product you mentioned, Flow Hive. I mean, how could you not love that? It's this is a complete revolution in the way that people keep bees, so it's and the design process that these guys went through was almost by accident that they came across a different way of cracking the actual hive itself without damaging the actual hive, without hurting the bees in any way. Or the larvae. Using the principles of gravity, where the honey basically just flows down to the bottom and into your jar. Yeah. My dad late father was a very dedicated beekeeper, and so he'd have the suits and we'd have the smokers, and he'd pull out the frames of the honey, and we'd put it into this machine where you could spin it around, and the centrifugal force would get the too
honey.
Complicated.
Yeah, that's right. It was incredibly difficult and messy.
What's
this was
beautiful
so simple
about the Flow Hive as well is that, as we know, our bee populations around the world are actually in decline. Yeah. Now, if that's a big problem. Is the Flow Hive going to solve that? No, but is it going to actually encourage more people to be beekeepers? Yeah, of course. So it's a beautiful product, beautifully designed. Again, it's intuitive, easy to use, and these guys are just doing fantastically well from a business perspective. Let me see, what else can I talk? I can't go past Tesla. They won our top prize Design Award of the Year in 2015. And at the time when electric cars were, it's 5 years ago. They were real trailblazers. Yeah, it was hands down from a design point of view, from a technology point of view. It just obliterated everything else in the awards that year, because it's beautifully designed. It was incredibly intuitive. I heard on radio a Tesla owner said it was like driving an iPad on wheels. Oh, it's better. I can speak from that firsthand. I have a Tesla, and it's the best thing that's happened to the automotive world forever, I think. And apart from the fact that it's a beautifully designed car, they're trying to solve a big problem, which is to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. And that's a worthy cause. Are they going to do it alone? They're probably not, but they are certainly doing everything in their power to get all the other automotive manufacturers to take notice of this. And I think you'll see in the next 5-10 years a massive shift towards electric cars. I mean, they've all announced it, but Tesla did it first. And we were talking before we hit record on the camera that when you saw the iPhone for the first time, it was this paradigm shift that made everything else before it look
obsolete and out of date. And you were talking about how you were driving your wife's car, and it's a conventional car, and it's just it's impossible to not notice how different it is compared to the luxuriously futuristic experience that the Tesla is.
Yeah, and again, people do criticize the fact that it's a very expensive car. But I think, like all things technology, when it first comes out,
absolutely
is really expensive, and over the years it'll come down, and there'll be cheaper cars out there. But I think as a design icon, that's certainly something I can't go past. And like I said, it's once you have that experience of using an iPhone, you can never go back to anything else with a built-in keyboard. It's like, what are we doing here?
That's right.
There's a beautiful little product that was entered a couple of years ago called the Lucky Iron Fish. And this is
I remember
a really smart little
simple but
product
effective
that's helping fight the whole idea of iron deficiency around the world. I believe there's 3.5 billion people around the world that are actually impacted by iron deficiency. And if you don't have enough iron in your diet, there's a whole bunch of health problems that then can fall from that. And they just nailed it in terms of using that empathetic part of design to understand the end user, and rather than actually having a little iron block and encouraging people to cook with this iron block while they're preparing a meal, they turned it into a little fish. And so this was a test case in Cambodia, and everyone thought, oh, if I cook with this little iron fish, it's going to bring me luck. Almost disguised as something that's going to bring you luck rather than it's going to make me healthy. Beautiful little product. It's now being distributed through the UN all over the world. And again, it's a design that's helping solve a problem. In this case, a really big problem. So, love it. And the diversity, again, is something I come back to. It can be something as simple as that, or something as highly complex as as an electric car.
So we've also heard about the demise of Holden in recent times. Now, I don't know if that's a political policy issue or a business issue or bad design issue, but have they done anything better with the design to help them succeed and not pull out of the Australian market and get out of all the right-hand car markets in the world, of which there's a few?
Look, I'm sure it was an incredibly difficult decision to make, and what a sad day for Australian car manufacturing. Holden, what an iconic brand.
Yeah.
I think everyone, took a bit of a sigh of like, oh, why? Could design have helped? I think so. I think that, Holden actually, believe it or not, have got one of the best automotive design teams in the world. Were they allowed to go out there and design the motor cars that they wanted to? I don't know. I think, was Holden a design-led company? I probably would have to say no. We just spoke about Tesla. Where was the electric car that Holden pushed out to the market? We had an opportunity maybe to have a crack at something like that. I don't think we've seen the end of it. I'm still quite optimistic. I think that there's an opportunity for the automotive sector here in Australia to give rebirth itself to hopefully designing another electric car. Who knows? But I was very sad to hear that news around Holden as well.
What are a couple of iconic designs from way back in history that even today we're still using that you can think of?
Oh wow, Alex! I mean,
the wheel has to be one.
I mean that's an obvious one.
Yeah,
I'll reference one that's actually designed in Australia called the black box. It sits in every single aircraft. It's not a aesthetically kind of beautiful.
It's orange.
Bit of object. Actually, it is orange, right? But this is a piece of technology that was designed, developed, by an Australian, and it's sitting now in every single aircraft around the world. And isn't that amazing? It's just like they say, good design is invisible. Like, well, that's something that is invisible, but it's an incredible piece of technology that brings an extra layer of safety to flying in an aeroplane. So you can't go past something like that. But human beings are amazing, and I always say we have the ability of putting a man on the moon. We can actually solve some of the big problems that are right here back on Earth as well.
They always talk about lack of this resource or that, but the one we hopefully will never run out of is brain power, which is what is driving all of this.
I mean, we briefly spoke about AI and robotics and what's the world going to look like in 5 and 10 years' time.
Well, that's one of my questions here that I wanted to ask.
Everything is, everything that can be automated will be automated. Any manual task that a computer can do faster and quicker, it's only obvious. We're going to get them to do it, right?
That's right.
The one thing, and hopefully we haven't taught computers how to do this, is creativity. As human beings, we have this ability to be creative, and as children, we're born with creativity. Unfortunately, I think we
snuff it out to some degree.
I think it gets bashed out of us as we grow up. But the ability to actually come to a problem with a creative mind, I think that's the one thing that's going to set us aside from computers and automation and AI and everything, robotics. So I think, for me, it only puts greater emphasis on the fact that something like design and creativity is really, really important. It's going to be much more important going forward into the future.
So what might the design world look like in the 2030s then? I mean, if you knew the answer to that, you'd be on the beach with a pina colada and $1 billion at the bank, as they always say.
I would. I think, I think technology is just going to be a part of our lives, whether we like it or not. It's going to be embedded in everything. I think that design's role is going to be, how do we actually make sure that technology is serving us rather than the other way around?
Yeah, absolutely.
How are we going to use clever, intuitive, user-centered design to almost hide the technology so we don't know that it's there, it's just doing what it needs to do. It's almost like electricity. I don't really know how these lights are powered and how electricity gets here. I just flick a switch and bang, they're on. And I think that's what design needs to do in terms of blending technology into our lives. We've got to, it's got to make our lives better. And we briefly had a chat before. You can't really be live in a world where you're scared of technology. I think it's threaded into everything that we do. But it's got to improve our quality of life. It can't be something that actually adds complexity, and it's got to be. At the end of the day, I think I've got 2 kids, and I just see how they adopt technology so quickly, and so there's a scary side to that as well. So we have to navigate our way through that and make sure that we end up in a world that's not
oppressive,
technology crazy,
or
we don't
dystopian.
That we're actually human beings as well in the process.
Yeah, look, I've often quoted what I've heard many years ago, which was that a technology is successful when it becomes an invisible part of your life, like electricity. Many people still to this day don't know that you can control your smartphone and tablet and your computer by voice. And my uncle was, he was like, we were having lunch today, and he was like, I'm amazed that I'm driving in the car and I can do so many things by voice, especially now that there's such a emphasis on don't touch the phone in the car. I mean, unless it's in a cradle and you're doing legal things. But, he calls numbers, he sends messages, he gets the phone to read his WhatsApp messages. There's so many things he can do just by voice. And that is that Star Trek reality that was, just science fiction in the 60s. And today we have so many voice computing interfaces that blend so well with touch, mouse, keyboard, and pretty soon we'll be somehow doing it with our minds. I mean, they've got prototypes. We're not there yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, it's scary. We're really, really scary stuff. But in a way, it's again, if you I imagine a world that can only be better.
That's it. And the best is yet to come.
Designers, architects. That's another central thing. We have an optimistic view of the world. It's not all doom and gloom. We kind of approach, whether we're designing a toothbrush or trying to redesign the world, it's all like, how do we actually improve it? We don't look at that toothbrush and say, how do we design one that's worse? So that optimistic mindset, I think, is critical in any designer, but it's actually, hopefully, it should be something that filters through society as well. There's some pretty hairy things going on in the world right now. I think we all have to have an optimistic view as to the fact that hopefully something good's going to come out of all of this.
Well, all those famous sayings, if you believe you can, you will. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you won't. And so it's all about mindset as much as anything else. Now, last couple of questions. I would have asked you this question before, so I'm going to ask it 2 ways. One, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received to help you get where you are today? And secondly, for those who've seen that response from you in the past video. What's the most important life lesson you learned over the past, decade or couple of years, different to that other most important piece of advice?
I actually I can't remember the last interview we did, but I know you didn't ask me that question. Look, I just think, you need to believe in what you're doing. You need to really, not just believe, you need to really, really passionately believe in what you're doing.
You can see it when someone does, because it just bursts in with life and energy and excitement.
Yeah, otherwise it's a hobby.
Well, or you're a drone or a robot or something.
Yeah, and so that underlying belief that what you're doing is important, and it doesn't have to be a big thing trying to change the world. It can just be a small thing. Being passionate about it and believing in it and being authentic about it, I think is critical. The other piece of advice, just be kind,
Yeah.
Don't be a dickhead.
Random acts of kindness,
Yeah, just go through life trying to be kind, and for me hopefully that just comes naturally to people. But my tiny little piece of advice.
Well, that's great. Thank you. So, what is your final message to the viewers and readers, and to this year's entrants of the Good Design Awards?
Final message. I'll leave you with a beautiful saying that I love, and that good design solves problems, but great design prevents those problems from ever happening in the first place.
How cool is that?
I love that, right?
Yeah. Because you thought the extra step, you went the extra mile.
Yeah,
to avoid the problem.
That to me is, if designers can have that mindset in designing anything, so how do I actually make sure that I'm driven to solve a problem, and if I get it right, I actually prevent another problem from happening, and hopefully try and solve a big complex problem. You mentioned the World Design Organization that I was a part of for many years. We took a complete shift in the way that organization was structured and its vision.
You redesigned it.
We redesigned it, and we aligned it to the Sustainable Development Goals. It's the 17 global goals set by the United Nations. I like to call them the Sustainable Design Goals. And that was that whole thinking about having an optimistic, aspirational view of the world as a designer. Those goals might be unachievable, but
you've got to reach for them.
But you've got to reach for them. You've got to have something that you're kind of pointing to. And so if it's an overarching message to any designer or architect out there, have a look at those goals and say to yourself, if I'm designing a laptop or a new smartphone or a kettle or a toaster, is it in some way trying to help solve one of those problems? If anyone's never seen the SDGs, go and check them out. I guarantee you they're all design problems, and that to me is the bit that I'm passionate about, that I believe in, that gets me out of bed every morning, going like there's an opportunity to throw design at all those sticky problems, and hopefully we get a chance to leave this world just a little bit better than we found it.
Yeah, well, like Steve Jobs, the dent in the universe, And just to quickly finish on that, we spoke before we hit record on the camera about how design was about, as you said before, avoiding problems from appearing in the first place. Less is more. Apple talks about 1,000 no's for every yes. You're talking about how design is about simplicity. And
I can't agree with you more. Elon Musk was very famous in coming out and saying that a product is doomed if it needs an instruction manual. You should just be able to pick it up and know instantaneously how to use it. That's not an accident. That's really, really, really good design, when you pick something up and intuitively you know how to turn it on, intuitively you know how to use it. You don't have to read a 163-page instruction manual. And a big part of that is actually knowing when to stop as a designer, not to over-design things, not to fill it with so many features that are just unnecessary. And there's that saying that's like, good design is as little design as possible. I love that, because that's exactly what that's about. You really need to look, and you see it sometimes. And I may have said this in our previous interview, that one of our judges said that joy is not accidental. You see somebody pick a product up and then they smile. That little interaction, that little smile, that's been designed. Someone's thought of that and and you get a lot of products that are entered into the awards that have that magic, and it's really, really hard to get that right.
Well, it's certainly a joy talking to you. It's inspirational, and I wish we could do this more when we can, But look, I'm very much looking forward to the awards this year. Thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to the next time we speak.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.